The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest, the disaster that shook the Roman Empire. In the shadowy heart of Germania's ancient woodlands, a catastrophe was about to unfold that would mark one of Rome's greatest defeats. Fog drifted between towering oaks. The damp earth smelled of moss and decay. Crows circled above, as if sensing the carnage to come. Deer bolted through undergrowth, sensing danger. It was the year 9 AD. At the peak of its power, the Roman Empire looked unstoppable. Yet in the midst of the Teutoburg Forest, destiny had prepared a brutal reckoning that would echo for millennia. The mighty Emperor Augustus had a vision: to transform Germania into a flourishing Roman province, stretching the reach of civilization beyond the Rhine. He dreamt of marble cities and Roman law imposed over the wild lands. Appointed to fulfill this dream was Publius Quinctilius Varus, a man of noble rank and political experience, entrusted with governing and securing the lands. His white toga, embroidered in purple, reflected Rome's authority. He was confident, authoritative, and believed deeply in the supremacy of Roman order. To enforce Roman control, Varus was accompanied by 3 elite legions, numbered 17, 18, and 19, marching deep into Germanic territory. With them came auxiliaries, engineers, merchants, blacksmiths, cooks, and families, forming a massive column that snaked through dense terrain. Bronze-clad soldiers marched in disciplined formation, their shields clinking, red standards fluttering in the breeze. The rhythmic beat of Roman drums echoed through the trees. At night, their camps illuminated the forest like embers, crackling fires reflecting off helmets. A legion on the move was more than an army. It was Rome incarnate. Livestock bleated, Latin chants and shouted commands echoed in the twilight. Among Varus's trusted allies was a rising star, Arminius, a young Germanic noble raised in Rome and trained in the Roman art of war. He stood proudly in Roman uniform, his eyes masking deeper loyalties. Arminius had earned Roman citizenship and served as commander of auxiliary forces. He wore the eagle insignia and spoke Latin fluently, but in his heart burned loyalty to his people. He saw Roman rule not as glory, but as oppression and cultural destruction. Patiently and cunningly, he prepared his revenge. By torchlight in hidden glades, he conspired with tribal leaders. Through alliances and secret councils, he united various Germanic tribes under one goal: to drive Rome out of their sacred lands. That summer, Arminius warned Varus of a supposed rebellion to the west. Maps were unrolled, decisions were made hastily. Trusting him implicitly, Varus ordered his legions to divert through the dense Teutoburg Forest, a landscape of steep hills, marshes, and tangled trees. The canopy dimmed even daylight. It was unfamiliar, hostile terrain for the Romans, perfect for an ambush. The decision, though seemingly strategic, would become his fatal error. As the Roman columns advanced, rain poured relentlessly, soaking their armor and bogging down the supply carts. Roads became rivers of mud. Wagons broke on narrow passes. Horses slipped and screamed. Messengers vanished into fog and never returned. The long line of troops stretched thin between the trees, fragmented, exposed. Drummers struggled to maintain rhythm. Legionaries shouted to one another across growing distances. Suddenly, from the shadows of the forest, chaos erupted. Thousands of Germanic warriors emerged from behind rocks, trees, and hidden ditches, howling their battle cries. Their faces were smeared with ash and ochre. Javelins rained from the canopy like hail. Traps were triggered, spiked pits, falling logs, landslides. Panic spread as tree trunks crashed down to block the way. Varus, caught off guard, looked on as his formation disintegrated. Trumpets sounded too late. Shields rose, but not fast enough. Roman soldiers struggled to form ranks on terrain they couldn't control. Some slipped in mud, others tripped over the dead. Encumbered by terrain, ambushed from above, they fell by the hundreds. The sound of steel clashing, of screams and guttural war chants filled the air. Varus tried to regroup and command. His voice was lost to the wind. Arminius, now in full tribal armor, led the charge personally, cutting through his former comrades without mercy. Behind him, war horns and drums reverberated from hill to hill. The fighting lasted for 3 harrowing days. Storms rolled overhead, thunder echoing like drums of fate. Tents collapsed, fires were doused, morale shattered. Roman officers were slain methodically. Some soldiers surrendered, only to be executed. Campfires became funeral pyres. Isolated units tried to flee into the forest but were hunted like prey. Roman discipline, once their greatest strength, dissolved in the nightmare terrain. Helmets were torn off, shields abandoned. Wounded men cried for help, crawling through ferns and roots. Realizing the hopelessness of his position, Varus fell on his own sword beneath a twisted tree. His death was not swift, it was deliberate, with trembling hands and eyes toward Rome. By the end, nearly 20,000 Roman soldiers lay dead. The Teutoburg Forest, once green and alive, was now a graveyard of broken spears, shattered standards, and rotting flesh. The legion's sacred eagle standards were captured, a disgrace almost worse than death. Horses screamed, fires smoldered. The soil itself was crimson. Ravens feasted. Wolves crept from the trees. News of the disaster traveled like a plague back to Rome. When Augustus received word, he tore his robes, beating his head against the walls of the palace, crying, "Quinctilius Varus, give me back my legions." The loss marked a turning point. No Roman army would ever again attempt to permanently conquer Germania east of the Rhine. The empire's expansion halted. Rome shifted from offensive glory to defensive caution. What had seemed like an inevitable conquest became a monument to overreach. In the ruins of Roman ambition, a new legend was born. Arminius emerged as a national hero. Though later betrayed and assassinated by rival chieftains, his legacy endured. His statue, sword raised, now towers above the forest he once used as a weapon. The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest stood not only as a military disaster for Rome, but as a triumphant resistance by native tribes against imperial might. He became a symbol of unity, cunning, and the desire for freedom. Modern historians continue to study the battle for its strategic brilliance, cultural significance, and brutal consequences. It reshaped Roman military doctrine, altered European borders, and left a scar in the imperial psyche. The names of the lost legions, 17, 18, and 19, were never used again. The shame was too great. A silence settled in Rome that no triumph could undo. To this day, the forest whispers its tale of betrayal, bravery, and a storm that silenced an empire. Each year, reenactors gather to pay homage. Museums display rusted weapons and armor. Children are taught the name of Arminius as a defender of liberty. The echoes of that conflict still reverberate in modern identity and nationalist thought. Even today, archaeological digs uncover weapons, bones, and artifacts scattered in the earth, silent witnesses to a battle that shook an empire. Statues of Arminius rise over the forest, reminders of a man once called a traitor by Rome, but a liberator by his own people. The silence in those woods is filled with echoes from the past, lessons about power, pride, and the cost of conquest. But the forest did not forget. In the centuries that followed, travelers and woodsmen spoke of eerie silences in the heart of Teutoburg. Some said they saw ghostly figures in glinting armor vanish behind trees. Others claimed they heard the distant beat of Roman drums or the wailing of horses long dead. The battlefield had become a place of legend and fear. In Roman chronicles, the names of the fallen legates were recorded with honor. Lucius Aegius, Marcus Caedicius, and countless centurions whose bones were never retrieved. Commemorative altars were erected across the empire. Coins were minted bearing the lost standards, and poets lamented the fall in mournful elegies. Yet no military campaign ever dared to retake the forest. Archaeologists today tread carefully over the site. Beneath the roots of ancient oaks lie spearheads, shattered helmets, and the rusted remains of Roman sandals. Soil samples reveal layers of ash and blood, telling stories that no scroll ever captured. The battlefield is now protected, studied with reverence, its silence heavier than words. On stormy nights when wind howls through the forest, it's said the spirits of Varus's men march again, seeking an escape from the fate they met. Their torches flicker in the darkness. Their cries are carried on the wind. Whether myth or memory, the Teutoburg Forest has become more than a place. It is a presence. Let this story be more than an account of tactics and terrain. Let it be a warning, for no empire, however vast, is invulnerable. No strategy, however brilliant, is immune to arrogance. And no conqueror, however noble, can stand against the will of a people united by land, spirit, and vengeance. This is not simply the tale of a Roman defeat. It is the birth of resistance. It is the moment when forest triumphed over marble, when instinct outwitted discipline, when a man named Arminius became a legend not by conquering Rome, but by stopping it. And so, the trees remain, tall, watchful, silent. Beneath them, history sleeps. But if you walk quietly and listen closely, you may still hear the echoes of an empire breaking. The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest was not merely a clash of armies, it was a collision between two worldviews. It revealed the limits of imperial ambition and the enduring strength of cultural identity rooted in the land. Through strategic deception, deep knowledge of terrain, and collective resistance, a coalition of tribes led by Arminius halted the most powerful empire the world had ever known. For Rome, it was a catastrophe that reshaped policy, memory, and myth. For Germania, it was the dawn of a legacy of defiance and sovereignty. As we reflect on this story, we are reminded that history is not just made in marble halls and imperial courts, but also in the silent shadows of ancient forests, where people chose to resist and prevailed.